content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. Yo, what's cracking, everybody? I'm GG. Get tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers, man. Before I get things started, man, I want to inform everybody, man, please, man, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. And hit the bell notification button so you could actually get the notification that I'm doing a live. Or that a video that I've distributed actually reaches your desktop or your cell phone, or whatever the case may be. Please do that, man. And I also want to give a shout out to my haters, man. May you catch a rash or a virus today or something like that, man. No, man, I hope y'all have a good afternoon, man. Straight up, for real. Even the haters, man. And, I want to big up, like I always do, man, all of the people who support the Green Gorilla channel, man. And when I get through doing that, we're going to get to the brass tacks. All right? So big up to Lee Ways, Black Sword 404, An Honest Look at the End, John J, Afro National, Sherlyn Woe, Wiki Dawson, Stefan, Julius Ferguson, and Lord Hamal. Big up to y'all, man. Big up to True 7360, Mr. Me Too, Call for President, I'm Just Jules, Broken Blade, Leading from the Back, J. Cleveland Green, Brotherly Love 215, Gold Professor, and Seventh Coast Dojo. Big up to y'all, man. I'd like to give a shout out to AKs and Curtains, H-Town, Roguish the Billmonger, BD Main, Adrian Thomas, Electrician 480, Gabinga, Cutting Up with the Jones, Banga. Let me get that right. Banga. Not Gabanga, but Banga. Shout out to that brother, man. Cutting Up with the Jones, Zanco 1, D Scott, Path Guy 74, and Pete Rock 496. Big up to y'all, man. Big up to Tahuti of New Comet, Aaron Peters, Bornolas, Dardar, Vincent Lindsay, Michael Pierce, Beautiful Trauma, Quiz the Poet, Black Quizit 80OS, Jazz Tech, and Shadow Observer. Big up to y'all, man. Also, shout out to Sugar T, Artisan MC, Nasiana, Kyle J. Sura, Kareem, Troy Warren, Mrs. KP Bailey, Alan Wiley, The Face, Mantis on Break, and Life of Commerce. Big up to y'all. Big up to Dreamlit, A. Wilson's Ghost, Timothy Blewett, Jeffrey Speed, Marvin Battle Jr., Mark Holt, Afro Troop TV, Adam, BGS Ivmore, and Ignat's Mouse. Big up. Big up to Brian Peaks, Papadita, Scott Haywood, Black Uru Strikes, Dr. Tree 33, Leroy Honeycutt, Supertech 77 Base X, Brian McMurray, Karan S., Anthony Davis, Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean, Charles Gilmore, and Patricia Colley. Big up. And shout out to Patricia Colley twice, man. Thank you for your donation. I saw that last night, and I really want to, throw some honors your way for that, man. Big up to you. Shout out to Greg, Barry Little, Mr. Valentino, Jason Hales, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Cameron 87, Dr. Rock, Mark Swift, Odd Collard, Donald Watts, Coach Hotep, Old Soul Chief, Mr. Blue Collar, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, and Universal 178. Big up to those guys. Big up to Rasheed Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, The Revelator, Aaron Infinite, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Kalan Jakala, Hostile Adept, and W. Pierre 1. Also, I can't forget my brother Force Windu, David Carroll, and Kevin Samuels, man. Big up to all of them, man. Straight up. On the Patreon side, I want to give a shout out to Prince D. Martini, Daxby, J Live, Rashawn Phillips Sorrells, Keith Bass, Nick, Rock One, Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, I'm the Light of My Father, Waffle Weave, William Joyner, Tyrone Hampton, Dornell Smith, Excalibur, Anu219, Pursuer Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi, Mo Mal, and the Sang. Well, big up to y'all, man. Thank you. Thank you for your support of the Green Gorilla channel. I appreciate it, man. You help me to keep things going. You make my my gray skies blue, man. You make everything go right in the world, man. Thank you. I appreciate your help and your support, man. Y'all deserve a round of applause and some honors. Straight up. You deserve a round of applause and some honors, man. And yeah, shout out to Barry Little, man. And thank you, Barry Little, man. You hold me down so often, man. I appreciate you holding me down, sir. You're always there, man, in the chat, man, holding things down. So I appreciate your help and your support. I really do, man. And if you want to be so kind as to, help to keep the channel going and to support the cause, man, do a membership program. Here's how you do it, and we'll be back, bro. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. Yeah, man. So far you heard my voice, but I brought 2 friends along. Next on the mic is my man. No, let me stop with that foolishness. But I got 2 brothers, man. I'm supposed to have 3, man. But I got Nameless, Protagonist, and my brother, SandDog. What's cracking with y'all, man?
What's going on, fam? Matter of fact, I'm ahead of y'all, man. It's 3:25 a.m. here, so it's already Founders Day for me.
Oh, Rue, man. Happy Founders Day, brother.
Yeah,
appreciate that, man. Thank you for your...
Yes, it's Founders are here, so I got my gold boots, man, and my purple laces ready. You know what I'm saying?
3rd Hill Hall, November 17th, 1911.
It's the day after my birthday today, so.
It was raining. It was a stormy night.
Yeah. So your birthday... Yeah, but Nameless' birthday is today, right? Nameless?
It was yesterday, so.
Well, happy birthday, brother. Happy birthday, man.
I thought it was today on the 16th.
No, it's the 15th. I just laid low yesterday. I had a lot on my mind.
Happy born day, man. Straight up, man.
Really?
Appreciate you, fam.
Come on, man. That's a good day. The 1st and the 15th.
Shout out to both of us.
Yeah. It's the 1st of the month. Cash your checks and come on, man.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna tell you something, man. That Source soundtrack was banging, man. It's an everyday thing. Yo, what's that? Bone Thugs and Harmony and damn Tupac on My Block. I love that soundtrack.
Yeah. That was a hot soundtrack back in the day, man.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know, man. I kind of I love West Coast music to a certain extent, man. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier today, and we were talking about the content of hip-hop music, man, and how it's shifted and changed. And not to say that hip-hop has been squeaky clean since its inception. It was already uncouth and in many ways kind of like dirty and playful and gritty. But the cats from the West Coast took it and turned it into a whole nother entity, man.
Yeah.
They took it and transformed it and turned it into. They turned the shit into black exploitation shit, man.
Yeah.
Essentially, is what they did, man. They black exploitation hip hop out, bro.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah.
I just look. So we was having this conversation about black men, and like in recent events. So the recent event was Kanye, and then Takeoff and all that. So
yeah.
First of all, I was like, black men don't love each other.
Yeah.
Because they don't love themselves. So I mean, you can't respect another person's life if you don't even respect your own life. You don't give a fuck about your own life.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't care about your life, you definitely don't care about the man next to you in his life. You understand what I'm saying? So, and the second thing we talked about was like how the consciousness of the persons, man, in hip hop, man, today, the consciousness, there's nothing there. The only thing that's there is the hollow shell of like a fucking zombie whose only cultural state is hoes, money, and clothes. Money, hoes, and money, cars, and clothes. All the nigga knows.
But you used to be able to listen to an instrumental and just off the strip of just hearing it, you just want to spit on it. But you can't. You don't get that inspiration no more. You don't listen to a flow and just get lost in the flow. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Like when somebody's spitting, there are times where you used to listen to just people go on a beat and it would seem insurmountable. Like you understood why they were on the radio. Now it's like, I don't know when this started happening, probably around 2000. You just hear folks on the radio like, man, I could do that. Like, what are they doing? You know what I'm saying?
I agree and I disagree. Like the one thing my problem is just with the content of this shit. I don't need a lot of complexity, although complexity is fine. It's not a prerequisite, but
what I mean by that is there's a level of honesty that's supposed to be there, and maybe you get that, on certain underground levels. Like we see artists all the time on YouTube, which probably was a low key blessing. You got a lot of people that's not signed, but I'm talking about the stuff that makes it on the radio. It's like junk food version of music. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like it's rehashed and recopied things we already heard in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's what folks in the 70s and 80s were thinking about when they heard stuff coming out in that 93 plus era. But it's not the same for me, fam. I hear some of that overseas, but I don't hear that. I don't hear that here like that.
Yeah, well, my only thing is that okay, so I had a friend, man, during high school, and for the most part, I was the hip hop head and he was the reggae head. Okay, and I mean clearly, in terms of cultural progression and identity formation and ethnic understanding, reggae music is far superior.
Shout out to Kabaka. Shout out to Neo.
I mean, and the reason I say that is, I mean, in one group of persons' music, in the Jamaican reggae music scene, they're making. I mean, the claim is that we're from the fucking line of fucking Melchizedek, King David in the Bible. So there's a reference to Judaism right there. And the claim that, like King Haile Selassie is one of the direct descendants, of the chosen ones. And, and they all rally behind that. So, I mean, it's not we need a white Jesus or anything. It has nothing to do with that. And it puts the chosenness back into, your mentality and your understanding. Now, Jews have never come after reggae music.
Nope.
Have you noticed that?
Man, and they tried. You saw what they tried to do with dancehall with your boy Sizzler not too long ago.
Yeah, well, that's because he said something about gay folks.
Right, the alphabet jump.
Yeah, when which Which is why I showed, I was telling y'all before we even cut to the show that we about to do today, that white people have basically hijacked civil rights. So civil rights was about being acknowledged as a human being. Okay? But that's the cheapest, lowest common denominator of what the movement was supposed to be about. It was one phase out of several phases that were supposed to take place and that were planned by the people who were in charge of the civil rights movement or who were its figureheads. It wasn't like that was the centerpiece and that was it. It was like, okay, well, what's the next piece? The next piece is a distributive and an economic piece. We just said, fuck that. We just gonna stay stuck on recognition and representation. So that's all people are talking about now. Representation. I want to represent. I want to see myself and the people like me everywhere. I want to see. And like, that's some cheap shit. It doesn't do anything. It's hollow. Anybody they already control the mechanisms of tokenism. So all they got to do is just put a few tokens into a few slots and then you get your representation. But what does it do to change the life prospects or the life conditions of people in the culture at large, writ large? It does nothing. It's cheap. And I'm surprised that black people, I don't give a fuck if intersectionalists are stuck in this groove, man. and to what end? More attention? How much attention do you fucking need, man? Put some money in my pocket. How about that shit? Cut the taxes, some shit. Let me get a loan like these white boys in the fucking 50s and the 60s got. Let me get a subsidy like that GI Bill shit that they was getting. Let me get some shit like the Homestead Act. Fuck all this. You don't need to have me nowhere. Fuck the representation. Let my pocketbook be represented. How about that shit? But no, not these people here, man. They really don't give a fuck about that. They want to be seen and honored and acknowledged and accepted and all this shit. Fuck all that. Like, I do understand that there was a piece that was necessary, but they already did that shit. It's done. The work is done. You can't go back and do the work that was, we performed that surgery, my niggas. So while you already got the heart transplant, now you want to go in, fuck it, we gonna transplant the heart again. Why? Well, because fuck, we like it.
You know how folks be faking like they sick just so they can stay in the doctors and have everybody like, yeah, well, they're sick, so they can't do something and they never get better. They got a name for that.
Yeah, hypochondria.
Yeah.
But the reason that people do it is because it gives them a certain amount of attention, for one, and people are attention whores. Okay? Number two, the corporations and the government likes it because it doesn't require any redistribution of resources. There's no one has to pay for anything for representation. It's cheap, right? No one has to make a sacrifice over it. So that's why it's so popular. I would love it too if I was a fucking governmental organization or if I was a corporation. All I have to do in order to be the darling of justice now is to fucking slap a whole bunch of gay people and shit on a movie or put them in advertisement or something. I don't even have to attend to race anymore. Because race is on the back burner now. It's all the minorities within racial groups now that are important and shit. Like the gay blind motherfucker or you know, which is, it's absurd because there's all this attention and representation ain't putting shit in your pocketbook. It ain't giving you insurance. It ain't giving you a retirement. It ain't making sure you got a home. But motherfuckers, fools love to perform, man. So let them keep performing, bro. But anyway, what's next on this agenda, man? What's up with this shit you want to talk about justice versus morality, bro? And then where is Officer Faulkner? Where the fuck is he, man?
I sent him the link, man. He said he was coming. So let's Let's see. Maybe he's caught up with a candygram.
Oh well, shit. You know, hey,
He'll say,
hey, man, it be what it be. I can't blame him, but
yeah, man.
let me know, man. Let me know, Faulkner. But yeah, y'all go ahead and take it over, man.
Okay, so you got the email that I sent you, yeah?
I didn't, because I didn't look at my email. I didn't know you were saying you want me to look at some documents that you got up here.
Yeah. It's so one is a PowerPoint, like a quick PowerPoint that I made.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You have the capacity to use slides and shit your damn self. But let me get it.
What's up? You said my. Okay,
which one is it? So you got presentation 1. Let me download this.
Okay.
So it's a PowerPoint that you got. One is a PowerPoint. Okay.
Yeah, the last one are just pictures. But I don't see where I could even.
You don't see where there's something that says present?
No.
So
are you on your phone or are you on your PC right now?
I'm on my tablet. So I have a iPad Pro. So I got mic, cam, chat, and more. And when it gets to more, it's only comments, settings, and
should have a share screen option, which is what he's talking about. So when you hit that, it should say share screen. It'll be next to slides and video files and all of that. But if you don't have that, you can't help it. I don't know. Maybe there's some weird way you got to do it with your software. But on PC, you can share.
No, I don't have.
So let me try to get this going for him, man. So that share screen, window, presentation. Can you see that?
Yes, coming up. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so what I want to do is go to slideshow, play from start. Okay, so everybody can see that. Is it large enough?
Yeah, that's good, actually. Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, cool.
All right, so just to give you guys a heads up, right? So what I want to do is we're talking about justice versus morality. And so what we wanted to talk about, because Gigi had brought up the fact that racism is not a feeling, but that it's an institution. And so in the military, right, which is one of the agencies that supports the institution of the state, we had something called an operations order. And an operations order has 5 paragraphs, right? The first one, which is the situation paragraph, right? It gives you the overall status and the disposition of the circumstance that you're going into, right? So what I wanted to do was I wanted to use the operations orders paragraph, the operations orders format, to kind of use it in a way to show you, to teach what, or to discuss what institutions are. How are they used, right? How are they used, and actually how they shape society and how people think and function. So many of us believe that we're making certain decisions as individuals, right? But you've been socialized to think and function in a particular way, right? And so based on how you've been socialized and function, then you're going to get morality, right? So now we all know with the history of racism, there's been a split in thought between, what one side of the population thought and what the other side of the population thought. And that's because you have things, ethics versus morality, like, ethics, what should be, morality, in a sense, what is. And then you would have a slave morality versus a master's morality, right? And so what I wanted to do, or what we're going to do, God willing, is we're going to go through the operations orders format to kind of show how institutions work, how your behavior is shaped, how you respond to the institutions, and how the institutions therefore respond to you. So when we're talking about justice and morality, basically we're talking about the disposition of both Black people and white people within America through certain ages of our history, right? So
let me pause you real quick, SandDog. because you said something. I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
When you mentioned master and slave morality, are we presenting this in the context that Friedrich Nietzsche offered that in Good? What is it? Beyond Good and Evil.
Yes.
So are we making the posit that in general, our cultural disposition in the social complex is that of the slave morality, and that white supremacy asserts this idea of nobility with the master morality?
Yes.
Or are we going to look at them just objectively irrespective of race? Just so we're clear.
We can look at it from both ways. We can look at it in reference to describing whether or not we've taken on the norms of slave morality, and we can look at the theory in general and assess it to see if there's any import to what Nietzsche has to say there.
Cool. Because I think that's important for the playback, so we really get that, because we see a lot of that. We see a lot of folks on the conservative and armbar folks into this, and they don't realize they're kind of low-key doing exactly what SandDog's talking about. You know, a lot of this internalization of certain values tied to white supremacy, and they don't realize it's a classic example of the pot calling the kettle black. But
correct.
Yeah, I mean, what you can do. Well, to me, the foolish part about it is, I mean, it's one thing to, in the abstract, to adopt a certain set of values or principles, whether they be moral principles or principles of justice, right? But what is the context in which those values or those rules or precepts, how do they play out, right? And then you also have to understand, you know, the role of equivocation in politics, okay? People act like that doesn't occur. And rhetoric, right? And what happens, you know, at face value, and what happens in relation to the consequences that flow out of various contexts. So what I'm saying is, we can talk about cutting taxes, right? And, you know, states' rights and things like this, and they make sense in the abstract, but the whole point of it is to be abstract so that the adverse consequences of those policies will be heavily directed towards people who are black or minorities or whatever the case may be.
Right. But case in point, they keep rolling back certain things, and then all of a sudden we lose context for the 14th Amendment. And guess what?
But the point is, don't have your dick, don't have your mouth wrapped around Republican white boys' dicks and expect for me to let that slide.
Right.
Because I'm not about to do that, bruh. So you can go ahead and if you dick riding white boys on the Republican Party, I'm gonna let you know that's what you're doing. Now, I'm not saying that I'm dick riding the left or what they got going on the left either. I'm an equal opportunity critiquer. But don't tell me this is like the choice between good and evil. Like there's only two choices and shit. Right. Because the Democrats do the same shit. Okay? And what happens is black people end up getting used like political footballs because they never develop an agenda and a strategy on their own. One that works strictly and solely for them. Then you get caught up in their minutia and their details. Now, if you just want a tax cut for your own business, nigga, just say that's what you want and keep it pushing. But don't try to convince me you're on the side of good versus evil. Fuck all that goddamn Zoroastrian bullshit where you tell me, okay, well, we're Ara Mazda, we're for the good, and you're the opposite deity. What you decide is consummate evil. Man,
shout out to Marimba. Shout out to Marimba Aini. I think that's classic Westernism all day long. But that's why I wanted to bring up that point, because I think
I know it is, and hopefully I made it. You know I know. Okay.
I know you know, but folks on the playback may not. So I'm talking to them more so than anybody on the panel. That's all, Fab.
For sure. Yeah. So let's go through this.
Yeah,
so
let's get into it because, you know, again, guys, like, you know, kind of like if you've been with us, like, you know, through the history series and everything else, because at first it was starting off like with we wanted to do it as the accomplishments of black men through the ages, but as I was putting the data together, right, again, institutions and how their institutions just jumped out at me, right, in terms of what actually really shaped our condition. And so, you know, going into this, you have to remember institutions are structures or rules or norms, right, that exist in a society that manage individuals' behavior, right? And so the institutions that we're going to discuss today are state, economics, family, family, and a couple of others. Can we go into the next? Can we go to the to the next slide, and I'll just
Yes,
and
sir.
I'll
And
yeah.
before you even say anything and we go any further, man, I've been trying to tell people, look, and that's why you've. I just want to summarize what you're about to do to a certain extent before you even do it. Look,
Yeah.
black people have been subjected to institutions that have been unjust for centuries. I don't give a fuck about the individual comportment and behavior of white people, whether they feel like a certain way towards niggas or not. I don't give a fuck about that. That's the way the white people act like they can be virtuous and shit. Oh, I ain't one of the good ones. Man, fuck all that. If you don't change these goddamn institutions, you can eat 1,000,000 billion dicks, nigga. Fuck you. That's what MLK was saying was, how many white people out there are actually interested in bringing about a substantive change such that they can bring about the equality that they say that they profess in the very Constitution, which is supposed to be the thing that undergirds the country to begin with. It ain't a lot of them out there. They like to sit there and rest comfortably in they fucking virtue and shit. You know what I mean? Which has nothing to do with justice. It's a bunch of fucking grandstanding. Okay? So I done got a little mad, so let me pull back and let y'all take it over.
And just know that when we're talking about the core seed of institution, there's no escaping the effect of culture, which is ultimately what we're talking about at the end of the day. And I keep saying one of the core issues we have with this institution building is that I can't find a single institution that wasn't created and animated in the spirit of culture first and foremost, because it's
Correct.
from there that you contextualize everything we're about to talk about. So as we go through these slides, as we go through this conversation, understand that you will quickly see the divergence in our efficacy utilizing these institutions and what needs to be done to addressing what we identify as the gynocracy and extracting that so that we can formulate a culture that is self-directed for our needs, aka an agenda that must be addressed. But keep that in the back of your mind as we keep going forward with regard to that.
Correct. Because also in the future, if it's allowed, as I go into this, so like I said, what you're looking at is a basic format that the military uses for planning. So I just want to show you how institutions think. So even in the military, before I shot a single bullet, right, when we would go fight somewhere, right, I would study the people's culture. So I would go through a whole process of culture. Any battlefield commander worth his salt is a historian, a cultural anthropologist, a philosopher, and a psychologist, right? Because this is, again, this is where it all starts. And so this is how you're going to formulate your plan on how to deal with the people that you're going to deal with. So out of this comes your mission statement. Out of this comes how you're going to execute. Out of this comes service and support and logistics, and then the succession planning. And so we'll go through all 5 parts of it. And then, God willing, in the future, we'll come back and we'll do one for political strategy and another one for diplomacy. So like stuff that kind of like comes out of the State Department and how they plan, because the State Department is split into sections, right? There's a political and economic. There's a political, there's an economic, there's a management, etc. And so, we can go into, so I could kind of share with you an idea of how these institutions plan and how they engage. So going into the situation paragraph, right? The situation paragraph contains information on the overall status, right? Disposition, as you can see, you can all read, for both friendly and enemy forces, right? And so I just gave an example of it. So you got Reconstruction, right? 400 black people, 4 million black people have been newly freed, right? And then you have the Southerners who feel disenfranchised. And I'm using these for examples because what happens is even on the battlefield, we have what you call phases, right? So phase 1 of the operation kind of could be like the beginning. Phase 2 and 3 of the operation is what's happening in the middle. And then phase 4 is like the climax, the end, how you want the mission to play out, right? So I'm just, I'm trying to simplify it in those terms. And so as we go through this, I'm looking at using these instances in Black history. So once we get to the mission paragraph, once we get the execution, once we get the service and support, which is the logistics of institution. And then once we get into paragraph 5, which is command and signal, and that's your succession planning, right? That's what allows institutions to live beyond individuals. Is because you have a value system that's come together, that's become this entity, and through that succession planning, right, that entity now lives on despite whoever the original founding individuals are, right?
So, let me just say something about that before. I'm so tired of all the strongman Negro, the valuable Negro, the messianic Negro, the I know everything Negro, the fucking salvific Jesus Christ, motherfucking Allah, the new Krishna nigga. I'm so tired of it, man. I know I'm one of the good men. I'm the this man. Fuck all that. If you don't have an institution that lives on and to persist through time, then you don't have shit. Because if you do have any movement and any traction, if you die, everything fucking dies with you. So why not build the institution that can carry the fervor or the spirit of what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish forward through time, and it doesn't matter who is in charge, or it doesn't matter what individuals fulfill what slots, okay? The enthusiasm is there through the institution itself, okay? So I'm the virtuous man type shit. I'm so sick of niggas saying that and acting like they the boss of all bosses and shit, like a Rick Ross record. Man, cut that fucking nigga Chicken George shit out, man. We past that point, man. White people been past this shit since the fucking, since they got out of the monarchies and shit. They moved to institutions and checks and balances in government. We still stuck on the charismatic man bullshit.
Yeah, Messiah complex.
Yeah, right? Man, stop it, man.
We pre-monarch.
You see niggas in this space competing like they gonna be the fucking new Messiah and lead the niggas like Moses parted the Red Sea. What you gonna lead us to the new community, the beautiful black community now? It's ridiculous, bruh. Like, and niggas feel like they the new popes and shit. The new, St. John the Baptist or something, man. This shit is so foolish and stupid. But let me stop, man. I just want to do some housekeeping before I just hate naivety and stupidity. Okay? Anyway, shout out to Shocks 12. Appreciate your donation, sir. Appreciate that. Electrician 480. Appreciate that, sir. Jason Hales. Appreciate that, sir. Says, hey, hello, good sir. Thank you for showing up to work today. As always, man, I haven't been showing up recently, but I'm going to show up more and more. He says, thanks for mentioning this. A play is a play. The Messiah complex has hurt us. It's killing us. And what it does is it actually sets up opposition amongst potential people who can work towards enhancing the quality of black life. But instead of doing that, we worried about working to push our egos to the fore. Like, like I'm that nigga. Fuck you, man. Who cares if you that nigga? Who cares if you got some money in your pocket? It ain't what you eating ain't making all black people shit. You understand what I'm saying? Come on.
We gotta travel 40 days and 40 nights to find Fubu Hill, dog. You know what I'm saying? By any means necessary.
Yeah.
I'm so done with this shit. But yeah, okay, go ahead, bro. I'm done with it.
Yeah, so this is what you're seeing, right? So again, if you go back to what we discussed before, our struggle with civil rights is, again, you're talking about people trying to roll back the Reconstruction Amendments, right? And then also all the other civil rights legislation that will come after the Reconstruction Amendments, right? And so you can see now how institutions are being formed, right? So like I said, there's Reconstructions, Black codes, and Jim Crow, civil rights, de facto segregation, and what I would call neo-Jim Crow. Or some people could say de facto segregation or neo-Jim Crow could be one and the same to some. Could we go to the next slide? So that way I could, move through it. And so, okay. And so now, in that situation paragraph, you get both friendly forces and enemy forces. Now, the reason why I combined them is because they're one and the same. So what happens is within the context of American history, for African Americans, you would have institutions that worked for you and against you, right? And then also the same thing for the other side, right? So for the other side, when it comes to the state, so like a state, as you can see, is a nation or territory considered as an organized political community under one government, right? And so within it, you have your three branches of government: the legislative that makes the laws, the head of state that administers, and then the judicial that interprets it, right? And then it has various agencies, right, that gives it the power to actually enforce the law, which will be military, paramilitary organizations like the police, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, FBI, and then Department of Corrections, ultimately when you end up in prison, right? And so these are kind of like the tentacles of it. Now, what you have to remember is that as an African American, right, you have no control over this in terms of the state. So if you want to go back to post Bacon's Rebellion, right, when you get to 1662 with Paternus Sequitur Venatum, what follows the womb, and if you're a black female slave, whatever comes out of your womb, it's a slave in perpetuity. This is a decision made by the state. So remember, you don't have the right to vote. Poor white men don't have the right to vote, right? And only people, for the most part, off the top of my head memory, will be rich men or wealthy people of certain status that were Anglo-Saxons specifically that would have the right to vote. So these would be landowners, for the most part. So now when you look at the state, right, the state is beginning to move to kind of set up this racial caste system. And then when you get to 1705, where you get the slave codes, right? And so the slave codes now will completely remove all mobility, opportunity, and sustainability that you would have as a African American in this country. Once now they start to push towards slavery, right? So for the most part, once you get through the Revolutionary War, right, you are bent over, screwed over, and slapped on the butt, for good measure. So for a lot of people now, what you have to remember is that from the beginning, this institution called the state, which makes the laws from the very beginning in the United States of America, this institution started along the lines of building on that caste system, right? And so you would have the institution called the state, and then in it, the agencies that help it kind of uphold the laws that the state has. Now, if you flip it over and you go a little bit into the future, that same institution will then, to whatever extent, go back and say, okay, well, this particular treatment of Black people at this level can no longer be tolerated. So therefore, we want to end this institution of slavery, right? And so again, in the context of the United States, that's why I say both friendly and enemy forces, because it's something that kind of goes back and forth. Like I said, it goes up and down. And my advice to most of us would be that, look, security is something, militarily speaking, security or vigilance is something that's constant and never stops, right?
We also need to take into consideration also the role of democracy in these institutions, because what's interesting, and we highlighted this when we covered the Reconstruction period, when we took a look at the very creation of one of these institutions you're talking about that's related to, and in my sector, we define politics as the armed enforcement of law, meaning, the state's ability to enforce laws and statutes through military action or the potentiality for military action. And this is how we got the Department of Justice, ironically named. Yet this same Department of Justice was critical in the oppression and repression of the exact same demographic it was created for, in the form of the creation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And a particular individual exploited his role there in assuring that we were essentially sabotaged every step of the way.
Correct. Yeah. So that's it.
And I want to say something about that, you know, because I'm trying to be as quiet as I possibly can here, right?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you how the institutions are what really carry the power. You know what I mean? You've throughout history you've had charismatic individuals. Like go back and read Hegel, because Hegel in and of itself gives you an understanding of the importance of institutions and the way the spirit. I mean, to him, it's like, you know, they call it German idealism, but their idea was that, okay, you had the character, fucking texting and bullshit. But the whole point is that you can either the history and its evolving, you know, of the spirit works itself out through either charismatic men or through institutions. Okay. Now, of course, there are going to be from time to time charismatic men who come in and they make their mark. But ultimately, what Hegel is making the case for is the means by which institutions can create a more stabilizing and lasting effect. Now, of course, I don't subscribe to German idealism. I think it's a bunch of metaphysical bullshit, and the teleological aim of it all is to demonstrate the superiority of white people, especially Germanic white people, in, you know, the end of, you know, civilization. You know, like everything that has worked itself out in history has worked out to culminate in their progression and shit. Like it's almost like Calvinism, some shit like that. But at least, I mean, it is important to understand from all of that metaphysical bullshit that institutions, man, they work. Okay, and it gives you some insight into how they utilize institutions to fulfill objectives and aims. They can even create an institution that can be flipped from one goal and be utilized to serve the purpose of another goal. Because the Justice Department was used to protect Negroes in the South against motherfucking hostile Confederate troops or hostile planters after, you know, the first Civil Rights Act. Then you come later on, you get the FBI and this weird ass J. Edgar Hoover motherfucker, and he takes the institution and turns it away from its initial purpose. That's a hellified game though right there. So we're looking at the game from a checkers perspective and not a chess perspective is what I'm saying. But go ahead, bro. You want me to flip to the next slide?
Yeah. Flip to the next slide, yeah. So that way we do it. So again, so now we get to education, right? And so now, again, shout out to BGS, man, for saying it for years, right? Who educates your children? And so for us, remember, so during the Civil Rights era, you had a lot of students who were fighting to push for, you know, our history, you know, to be a part of the curriculum that you would have in schools. Right. And so now when you get to education, what is education? The process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, right? Which reinforces skills and cultural values, especially at a school or university, right? And so now what you have to remember is skills and cultural values, right? So because there's another institution that's coming right after this, right? So now you have to remember that, you know, okay, Black people are slaves, we're less than. So you're going to have to kind of create like this whole kind of false narrative. So one of the reasons why we will be stricken from whatever our contributions will be to civilizations like Sumer or ancient Egypt is because you want to prove that that we don't belong to any form of high civilization, right? It removes our value. So by teaching you that, you know, again, that Black people are dumb, or even for the Native Americans during the time, right, when they were quote and unquote labeled savages, and then those amongst them that would convert to Christianity will become known as noble savages and all of this other kind of nonsense. And then remember, like the old name I used before was called drapetomania, right? And so drapetomania, I forget the so-called scholarly person that invented the term, but drapetomania was supposed to be a condition of a slave that kept running away, right? So what he was saying is that life was so good in slavery that you would have to be crazy to run away. And so somebody who would wanted to keep running away to get their freedom will be labeled a drapetomaniac, right? And so remember, over time, you would have like a lot of racist science, racist entertainment that will come and put up these things. They're obviously lies, but for a long time, this will be truths to many people. And so other delivery methods for education will be informal education, which is a self-study. And that's why I was trying to tell you guys, friendly and enemy forces, right? So Black people, many of us would get knowledge of self through informal education, right? So you would have it, so for example, when I was growing up, Ivan Van Sertima, obviously not in my curriculum, right? Amos Wilson, not in my school's curriculum. Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, not in my school's curriculum. Dr. Ben Yakinen, not in my school's curriculum. So when you get into informal education or self-study, this is kind of where I began to learn, about, Black history, what we were before slaves, and then, what happened to us within the context of the United States, right? So self-study, YouTube, going to Dr. Claude Anderson lectures in Harlem, that kind of stuff. This is what will be a informal, education, right? And then your non-formal education is structured learning. It's not necessarily accredited, but, again, you would have like things like, adult literacy programs, people learning to read, people learning to read or to obtain, other skills, but from sources that are not necessarily recognized. Although there is structure in it, but the source itself is something that's quote unquote not officially recognized. And so if there are some educators out there who know a little bit more than me, again, this is not an ego thing. We don't live to be right, but what I am trying to do is I'm trying to show how the state and all these other institutions, kind of work together to shape what the Black disposition is, or to shape what the white or the overall American disposition is as it comes from race, right? And so, again, the agencies involved in this will be everything from primary school, high school, trade schools, or, what you PhDs guys call famously the academy, right? And so all of these things are coming into play to kind of shape how you see the world. And so again, when I was growing up in Chinatown, they had a school. Even at a time, the Nation of Islam had schools, right? But for African Americans, it wasn't a thing to kind of send your kids to schools. Many of us went directly to public school. So if you're wondering, so for many of you who might be in the chat or those who are going to listen to the playback, if you're wondering why so many of us have these crazy kind of like or weird opinions about the truth of American history, it all boils down to this, right? Because even the educational institutions or the HBCUs that we built don't necessarily focus on our history and use it to build or reinforce a culture, right?
Well, that's one of the. Well, let me stop you here. Let me stop you here, fam. So look,
yeah,
Carter G. Woodson, man, a member of our fraternity, man, started Negro History Week, so that Black folks or Negroes, as they were, termed at the time, could have some insight as to the various personages in their history who did things of note in order to improve the quality of life of that demographic, right? And also there is some, insight into various historical events that took place, right? That worked to the favor of Black folks, either spiritually, and what I mean by that is not something, having to do with an immaterial soul, but having to do with political spirit related to resistance against oppression, domination, and injustice, okay? That's what I mean by spirit. The heart to fight and resist. Okay. Now one of the things you got to understand, now we got Black History Month. So Negro History Week now has evolved into Black History Month. Okay. But we don't study our history on an ongoing basis. We study white people's history. We understand like political events through a white person's lens. Like Carter G. Woodson was like, this is the worst thing that could happen to the black mind. This is what the miseducation of the Negro entails. Learning all about them and what they think and their history and their ideals and their values without having any understanding of your own. This is what leads to confusion. Right? This is what leads to what, Malcolm X would call bamboozlement or, being run amok and led astray. It leads to cultural confusion. First of all, your culture has purposefully been shattered and destroyed. Your religion, your language, your familial, your historical lineage, all of it has been separated from you on purpose so that they could train you to be the type of creatures that they needed in order to make a profit from you. That's all it was. So now, in the 21st century, we have to use informal structures in order to educate ourselves. But most people don't even care about it, though, because the only thing they care about is working through the institutions themselves. Through the ones they devise and going through the machinations in order to, matriculate up through the institutions that they've developed in order to establish honors and merit amongst themselves. But my strong opinion is we got to do better than that, though. We have to know not only our history, but we got to know their history. We have to have our own set of informal, degrees and shit to demonstrate, like, does this person have any political savvy at all? Like, does he fucking know the history of black study? Because, you can say, okay, well, he knows Plato, he knows Aristotle, or he knows Milton Friedman, and he knows John Rawls, or he knows Charles Darwin. What the fuck do you know about black folks in American history who've been strategizing or developing thought processes to resist against our oppression? Like, do you know any of it at all? A lot of dudes don't, even in this space. They have no knowledge at all, but they're experts, though, because they've been able to matriculate through the Western educational system, which they do, not because they find intrinsic value in being educated, but because it serves as an instrumental good for them to have some sort of title or position, or to accumulate some sort of wealth, or to gain some kind of status. You get what I'm saying? But let me pull back.
Let me add to that point because I think it's very important. I'm gonna put a link in the chat because I won't say this over the voice lines here just due to the nature of it. But look, you heard of the I'm gonna call them the youth of the 1920s through 40s in Germany. That's all I'm going to say. There's a link there. It shows you the way in which they were brought up. And what is absolutely critical to understand is everything that's on the slide here, they covered ad nauseum. And without having this as a primordial, I don't want to use the word groom, but if they didn't have this to develop a cultural perspective that instilled and indoctrinated and socialized all the values that they wanted with their institutions, they would not have had the ability to create the apparatus that they did. Because what they created was institutions that had a population that was in sync and in the same perspective of the objective they were trying to achieve. And if it wasn't for I'm not going to say that much. We'll just say that their failure was due to people at the very top failing to follow simple instructions. For all intents purposes, we probably would either be dead or speaking German right now if things had gone the way that they were going to go. We'll just say that their institutions weren't necessarily what failed them. This crap at the end of the day works. And you can instill whatever information you want with regard to that. But just like Carter G. Woodson said, even furthermore so, just like what Dr. Henrik Clark's teacher and mentor told him, he said, in order to understand your history, you need to study the history of your oppressor. And it's through understanding that he began to find ways of what wasn't being said to understand where he needed to look so that he can fill in those gaps of what he was not receiving in these public institutions that were not created for us because they were not animated by our cultural seed. I guess as Dr. Remember I need would say, our usili. But yeah. Go ahead, fam.
We'll put it this way. All I'm just trying to demonstrate is that, along with SandDog, basically, everyone did everything that they could in order to ensure that their values were implanted in us and that we didn't have autonomous values, okay? That developed naturally out of our own natural ecology or our own political experience. This is why they fight so hard right now, in order to control and frame the narrative around race and justice. And you see it play out, you're seeing it play out right in front of our faces. So you got people like Kanye who say some things against one demographic, and then it gets construed as hate because they've changed the narrative on what, racism actually is. They've made it to be something related to morality, a disposition, a personal or an individual, moral flaw or something of that nature. Whereas black people have been saying this is a matter of justice. It's a matter of institutions. It's a matter of economics. It's a matter of education. It's a matter of family structures and laws. But now, unfortunately, because black people, I hate to say it, there are a lot among us, man, whom the Dunning-Kruger effect, it applies, bro. Got a lot of guys who think that they are on the fucking ball. Like they really know what the fuck they're talking about. A lot of guys. Like these guys think they're fucking doing like, I don't know, like Einsteinian physics and some shit like that. Like they really think that they're working on the cutting edge, but they're dunces for real. And not to say I'm the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but for crying out loud, bro. Like, if you don't have the background of the spirit of resistance from your own people, whether you agree or disagree with what they've said, if you don't even know what they've said, you have no idea any of the things that they communicated at all, then you're just taking us in a fucking loop-de-loop. You got us out here stuck on stupid because of your own hubris and your own pride. That's all I'm saying, bro. So anyway, let's push on, man. Let's get to the next slide.
Okay. All right. So now, religion. So you have religion and you go back one. Religion and ethics. Go back. Yeah. So now again, so this is another institution, right? And so again, friendly and enemy forces. So again, this is, this comes to the value systems that human beings hold sacred, right? Be it the 10 Commandments, Sharia law, the tenets that were taught by Jesus Christ, and so these things, they reinforce social unity, and stability, and, and quote and unquote, get people to work for positive change, right? But that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So again, so we all know that during the Great Awakening, well, first and foremost, right, that will be the crazy part, because you would have amongst all three of the Abrahamic faiths, they will use quote and unquote the curse of Canaan or Canaan or the curse of Ham, right? So that will be used, right, to say that, black people are descendants of Ham, and because of Ham's sin, black people are cursed. That's why they look the way they look that way. And based on the book of Genesis, they will be enslaved, right, to quote and unquote serve the younger brother. So this is a justification. And Bartholomew de Casas, I believe, used this in 1617 because he felt bad for the Native Americans, but based upon this biblical verse, hey, go on and go right ahead, right? And then, a couple of days ago, Gigi showed one of my favorite videos, which is how black people became black according to the Mormons, right? So,
wow, bro.
So when there was a war in heaven, right? When there was a war in heaven to fight who would control the earth, be it Lucifer or Jesus, the people who were neutral about it became black, right? And so,
ain't that crazy, man?
Yeah.
And they was riding with that hard, fam. Shout out to Romney. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want you to think about that. Like, that's the reason I showed it, was to demonstrate. And I posted that video before any of the controversy surrounding Kanye West came to the fore.
Yeah.
Okay, so here you have clearly have a theological tradition which is racist as fuck. I mean, cooked right into the institution.
Correct.
Of Mormonism. I mean, it's baked into it, right? But the funny thing is, you got white people currently who will talk about individual people. I mean, like their moral shortcomings or their individual prejudice, and act like that's what racism actually inheres in.
Yeah.
And it befuddles my brain how neglectful and how ignorant black people are when it comes to understanding the game that's being played related to this. I don't get it, bro. I'm just being honest. Like, I don't understand how naive black people are, man.
Yeah, but but remember, also
Eldridge Cleaver was one of them, right?
What a Mormon?
You ain't know,
man. But you know what? Here's the funny thing, though. Like, and I was also having this conversation with my boy, right? Today, I called him. I was like, because he sent me a text, and it had been a minute since I spoke with him, and I basically said, "Hey, look, bro," and I said something similar on another show that I did recently. There ain't no group of people throughout the entirety of history who don't have a cosmogonical myth. Cosmogony means, how did the universe come into being? Okay? There's no group of people on the planet Earth who don't have cosmogony. Nobody. Okay? And there is no group of people who do not place themselves in the center of the cosmogonical myth. And meaning that they're important to the creation story. Except for Negroes in the United I'm kind of being ignorant by saying that, because of course there are people in other portions of the world who've adopted religious traditions that are not of their own making and development, okay? But what I'm saying here is, the extent to which we adopt a religious tradition that doesn't place us at the center and doesn't speak to us as if we're the chosen ones within that tradition, then you got to begin to think, what value does that tradition have for us?
But I think it gets worse than that, Gigi, because not only that, we're probably the only demographic that see it as heresy if we place ourselves in that position. We have kind of an anaphylactic reaction to that idea, to the point where we'll actually attack it.
Bruh. Shout out the good times.
We'll put it this way. The Buddhists got Buddha. The Krishnas got Krishna. Yeah, I mean, this just goes without saying, man. Okay? But I will say this though, like, even the people who were the members of the Germanic tribes, their religious tradition was taken from them as well. Okay? Because the Roman culture tried to impose its cultural values on the Germanic tribes. But after a certain period of time, the Germanic tribes said, fuck it. Many of them became Christians.
No.
But they co-opted it in a way in which black people have never been able to co-opt Christianity. Not like they have. Not like the Germanic tribes have. And one could argue, I mean, to a certain extent, the Roman Empire were able to infiltrate and proselytize and indoctrinate various members of the Germanic tribes. They were able to do it, but they were never able to enslave the sum total of the Germanic tribes, bro. They were never able to do that.
I got to walk back a statement. I'm forgetting an obvious exception. According to the Fubu Hill Orthodox theocracy, the black woman is God. I forgot. My bad. Go ahead, please continue.
But the thing is, but like I said, so again, when we talk about these institutions being a gift and a curse, because remember, during the Great Awakening and also, during the Civil Rights era, right, we will come to rely on the doctrine of these institutions, to set us free from slavery. So again, you have reached the point where even the slave masters or people out of the South were concerned about people learning Christian theocracy because it would give them weird ideas, about, about freedom, right? And so what they ended up doing was they played with the theology, right, a little bit, and they got they were able to get many people who were slaves to think about the afterlife instead of right now, right? So the whole idea is that, here's the natural order of things, right? You're a slave, and what the Bible will say, slaves obey your masters. And so they took that, again, weaved it into a particular context, and they were able, for some people, they took this theology and revolted. And for some people, they were pacified by this theology. Like, okay, cool. If I just stay here and and I play nice and I'm good, then I get to go to heaven, when it's all, when it's all over with.
And let me say something about that, bro.
Yeah.
Too many black people, like when Constantine in the 3rd century AD decided that he was going to adopt Christianity as the official religion of Rome, he didn't have any intention on making Christianity like important for the afterlife. He did not have a slave morality understanding of what kind of function that the institution of Christianity would play in his adoption of it as the official religion of Rome. He basically said, I'm going to conquer the fucking world with this shit. He didn't say, well, we're going to make sure all the souls are saved and they have a happy afterlife. No. That's a difference. I mean, it's a big difference. And so I was also having this conversation with my partner today. I said, man, black people look at religion like a lottery ticket. You ever bought a lottery ticket and motherfuckers get to imagining the kind of shit they gonna have when they win it? Like, it's like you get to fantasize about all the good shit is to come. If you just won. That's how black people perceive religion. You motherfuckers get caught up in the rapture and they start dancing and they fucking get caught into, ecstatic trance and shit like that. Over what? What he gonna do for you after you dead? Nobody else has this position on religion except for us, bro. I mean, I'm not saying nobody at all does, but I mean, come on. Nietzsche is definitely going to say, this is a slave way of thinking. This is what a slave thinks. Because their condition in life is so hellish, they need to create a Shangri-La after their death to be able to actually confront their reality in the here and now. But the so-called, the Ubermensch, this is heaven for them right here. This is their heaven right now. Shout out to Farrakhan, man, in the old song he wrote a long time ago. You remember that song, man? The white man's heaven is the black man. Is the black man's hell. You ever heard that song? Go peep it. Yeah, Farrakhan used to play the guitar and shit. Was a singer before he became, you know, the so-called the main speaker and spokesperson for the NOI. Go check it out. Black man's heaven. I mean, the white man's heaven is a black man's hell.
Something interesting you're bringing up, with the example of Constantine. About 100 years prior to that, this book I linked in the chat called The Roman Guide to Slave Management was put forward. And it was written by Marcus Sidonius Falks. And the reason why he wrote it is when they were bringing in the Germanic tribes, they didn't have concepts such as slaves and whatnot in their culture. So they were finding that when they were going to these plantations out there in Roman territory, they had no idea how to manage these organizations and locations. And in it, he makes a lot of references to Christianity starting to catch popularity kind of on the outskirts of Roman territory. It hadn't been adopted as an official Roman religion yet, but the arguments that he makes as a nobleman looking at the religion is exactly the critiques you just mentioned, where he looks at it as a means by which slaves are able to find a sort of dignity in their position. And his concern was that if the average Roman citizen picks that up, they're going to lose their propensity to conquer and instead embrace a lot of the arguments that we see being used today that many of individuals in the AO social complex were taught. And ironically, his whole argument is some of these characteristics, minus the noble aspect, should be imposed and enforced on the population that you're going to have as slaves so that they stay in that position. But his concern was for those individuals that are performing a kind of indentured servitude. They didn't want that mind state to stay because then they wouldn't be productive citizens when their time was up. This book is interesting. I'm going to cover it, but it was written around 200 AD, and it really covers a lot of the issues we see of how they actually created these slave populations back then. And I see how a lot of that was carried over to the modern plantation model. I'm going to say way out into the future in the 1700s, and the way it was carried out in the US in particular. But I just thought that was an interesting point to really highlight and show.
For sure. Hey man, that's dope, man. We want to read that book. I haven't even seen that one myself.
Oh yeah, man. That's part of the archives.
I want to shout out some people real quick. Shout out to MLR, Two Triv, and Gerald Noble, man. Appreciate you. And yeah, the Cash App does work, man. But yeah.
Thank you. Also shout out to MLR as well. He hit me up as well. Appreciate that, fam. Shout out to you.
For sure. So let's, SandDog, take it over, dog.
Yeah, so we can go into the next one. So economics, right? And so again, study of how people allocate scarce resources for production, distribution, and consumption. And so in bold, I have both individually and collectively. So remember, microeconomics could be you, the individual, family, but collectively, macroeconomics is how the state spends money, right? How the larger institutions spend money. And so the things that kind of motivate it, when you talk about the things that motivate the economic institutions or what they're to uphold. So their property rights. And so guess what? You and I were property, right? So at the end of the day, right, at least from the beginning, you had no rights, right? So your property, and you don't even have the means to own it, right? Because remember, facilitating transactions. So during the slave codes, slaves were not allowed to do what? Facilitate transactions. So without some kind of special pass or permission, or even with that, you will not be able to engage in market activities, right? So when you're talking about the destruction of Black entrepreneurship, you're talking about killing something before it even starts, right? So remember, we're integrated into this culture. We're denied opportunity to own things. We won't get money from other kind of non-state institutions like states. Like banks. So we won't get money from there. And so this is what kind of puts us in the destitute state that we're in, right? So you have to remember too, especially in the 70s, or as black people in the later migrations, as black people who were moving up from the north, again, you would get funneled into the projects because either the people in certain parts of the city or in the suburbs didn't want to live with you, right? So they didn't want to live with you. So now you're kind of being able to see or connect the dots in terms of how all of these institutions are put into play. And that, you know, again, you're not the Kool-Aid man, right? You're not going to punch a hole in the wall and, oh, yeah, your way to quote and unquote freedom. Like I said, this is not going to happen because you have a lot that's working against you. And that a lot is working in a very synchronized and organized manner. Shout out to a future discussion of how we go from institution to social, political, and economic machines. But that's a discussion, you know, for another day. Right. And so now, if you're African American, everything that's on the slide is completely denied to you. Right. And so when when Martin Luther King had the discussion about bootstraps, he was like, that sounds nice, but it's quite insulting to tell a man to do it when he has no boots. And so what you're looking at here in the slide is the foundation of the bootstraps that many of us have been told to pull. So again, if you and I were slaves, you yourself are already property. Property isn't allowed to vote. It's not allowed to engage in transaction or build institutions of its own, to include even a family, right? Without the slave master's permission. So again, for those of you out there, you're looking mainly the economics. You're looking at the boots that you would need to pull the bootstraps on. And so without this, you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of.
But yet and still, these moral exemplary Negroes who got it all fucking figured out, they just want, you know, niggas to be hyper moral. Like you can defeat all of this. All you need to do is just have the right attitude. Like, I mean, it fucks me up how ignorant these Negroes sound, dog.
I ain't getting arrested. Why can't you?
Like, I'm not saying that you should not resist and that there's no moral accountability at all for black people on the account that they're oppressed. That's not the argument I'm making. But what I'm saying is, you have a history, a legacy of racist laws, racist practices, racist policies that basically were ushered in order to prevent you from being able to have what the average white person has access to, just quite naturally. And instead of black people understanding this, they just say, and, you know, trying to think about it in terms of justice, their default is just the morality of black people and what they need to be doing. And how if you don't do what they think you need to be doing, that you're not productive, you're immoral, you're pookie, or whatever the fuck language they got that simulates that, that, you know, kind of comes close or approximates that of the white motherfuckers that they love so much. I mean, it's just like, come on, dude. I'm not saying that, you know, black people shouldn't try as hard as they can in order to, you know, make it in the market. But the market wasn't for us, dog. It wasn't devised and developed so that we could, you know, participate in it and get in and start off running like we should. It was devised for them to run. We were the fucking property, nigga. And it's the shit that white women say, man. Like, I'm so tired. Excuse me, I'm so tired of hearing them bitches talk. I'm so tired of white men complaining about white bitches and woke culture.
Yeah.
I'm like, you motherfuckers put the battery in these bitches back. You went to the store and got the motherfucking, not the regular batteries, you got the fucking extended life Duracells and put that shit in their back. And now they complaining everywhere about the shit. You created the monster.
That's all they did, Frankenstein.
They created that monster, and now they bitching and complaining. Like people like Nerdtronic and shit like that. You ever heard that dude, man? Have you heard of him? I mean, I'm not, look, I understand, you know, like men are upset that, you know, like the comic industry has been, you know, fucked with and tampered with, and the stories and the narratives have been reshaped. But it was white boys who gave these bitches, they put the battery in these bitches' backs, man, in order to circumvent the elevation of black folks. It's the facts. And basically, now you can't get them bitches to shut up. You can't make them sit down for a minute. Shout out to Bill Burr. He's like, man, sit down next to me and get your fucking talking to. But now they doing the talking. I mean, these bro, the nerve of these, the gall of these bitches. Not my kids, not this busing. We're for states' rights. You see, I keep that up. I keep those pictures ready to go. Matter of fact,
you might as well show them again just to let them know.
Show them again, bro. I may as well show them bitches right now. Hold on.
In the spirit of because I told you so. Go ahead.
Hold on, let me make it big. I'm gonna come back to your slide. You see that? The commies have infiltrated our schools.
That's you, dog. That's all you, dog.
They have infiltrated our shit.
Hey, look at them K's to the left real quick, though.
I mean, it's the facts. They were so... Do them bitches look oppressed to you, dog? Do they look like I'm building me a home? Like they in drudgery, and them bitches look like they living their best fucking life.
Them Kool-Aid smiles, dog.
Them bitches look like they living the best fucking life you can live in this bitch, bruh.
It got the nerve to quote the Bible, though.
I'm being honest. Look at them. But they oppressed, though. This is why I say everything has been cheapened contemporarily as it pertains to black folks, man. Everything is cheapened now. Our children won't be bust with these niggers. And I showed the pictures before. I said, hey, bro. I'm trying to scroll through this shit, but it's, it ain't operating like I wanted to.
Look, that chick on the bottom right there next to that handbag, I think says everything you need to know.
But you get the picture, man. Like, these bitches living their best life, dog.
That's true.
They living their best life, dog. These ain't no destitute ass, fucked up, like they going through some shit where they, oh, Johnny, I can't breathe. Man, fuck all that, man. That's some bullshit, bro. Now it's all about them and what they feel and what they think and their sentimentality about the world and all this shit. They basically jacked the narrative. And these are fucking oppressors. They are oppressors. They are in control. They work with the institutions. And they want to confirm and to reify them. Not eliminate them and do away with them. They're like, we want to preserve this shit. Word to this shit. Like, word to the mother. Like, this is what we own. But anyway, let's get back to your shit, bro.
Look, there's a word that this is called. I put a link in the chat. Y'all can click on that when you get time. That's all we're going to say about that to really enforce Gigi's point. That's exactly what they are. Enabler. Go ahead, fam.
Okay. And so now we did this one. Go to the next one.
Family.
Yes. So now this is hot, right? So this is the capstone that the builder rejected. What they say, the foundation of all institutions and guess what? You weren't allowed to have one. So, it puts me in mind of the hieroglyphics. So again, when I was growing up at the time, again, somebody who was a priest or whatever had the costume, whatever particular animal will be the avatar of that god that he was praying to. And so again, back then, to many women of our particular demographic, if you were to mention that, if you were to state and mention that, they were like, wouldn't you be cool if you got a bigger place, or if they could buy the sap, or if they could what am I trying to say? If they could participate, I just lost my train of thought. If they could participate, in the institution. So even when we were slaves, we had to get permission from the master in order to marry. And then two, again, because of paternis sequitur ventrum, when the kid comes out, it's not your own, right? And then you get saddled with kids that are made by other people, to include the slave master himself, right? And so again, you have this very vicious back and forth that's happening to the Black family, to Black men and women alike. And so these habits will go on to haunt us even now. So again, when we did the show before and we talked about slavery, in the family, 13-year-old girl, slave master comes to you and says, hey, if you can pleasure me and give me 6 kids, I'll set you free, right? And so chances are she might have taken that offer, right? The same thing for the young men. When you grew up, you had to be of a certain size, or they were on some plantations, they will measure your member. And if you didn't meet that criteria, then hey, you become you'll become a eunuch. And for those of us who did meet the criteria, or beyond, they will go into, other places, within that society. And one of the horrible things about it too is that even in slavery, we had a stratification of class, because the house slaves wanted their children to marry house slaves. So even for the house slaves, it will be a step down for them on a hypergamy scale to even think about marrying a slave that's been in the field if you've been in the house, right? And so,
Shout out to house niggas, man.
yeah, man. So,
shout out to the house niggas out there, man.
Hey, wait, y'all heard of the Proctor family, right?
Who is that? Who's
Okay.
that?
Yeah, so folks in the DMV may know about that. DC just came up in the chat. All I'm going to say is the Proctor family have a reputation of doing precisely that. I'll let you look them up independently. Just look up Proctor family and light skin. That's all you need to know. Just understand that that's a real thing. That's all I'm going to say. And there's some real social consequences connected to that. Shout out to PG County. But go ahead, fam.
Well, shout out. I just want to say shout out to the house niggas, man. I'm gonna go ahead and put a meme up. I ain't put a meme up in a minute, but I gotta shout them out, man, to a certain degree, man. Shout out to all the house niggas out there, man.
They appreciate it. King Uppity will send them the word. They'll make sure they get your regards, right? But and so this is the thing. So you don't even control the institution of family, and so again, and that's why, like, when you don't know your history. So for African Americans, especially the women, it gets very weird, when you hear them say, like, things like the patriarchy or oppression from men, because again, us uniquely, we never belong to our own family structures, because again, everything was controlled by the institution. So you would have, slavery is enforced by both non-state institutions, right, which are banks and NGOs and all that stuff, but more than like banks, corporations. So you have non-state institutions, right, which are working in conjunction with the state to uphold this practice of slavery, which is the foundations of racism, right? So now you can kind of see how everything from damn economic, religious, educational, and the state itself is creating this environment, right? So you think, so for example, we think that, okay, so what am I trying to say? So remember I brought up internal locus of self-control versus an external locus of self-control. So, there are many of us who really desire an internal locus of self-control, right? This is what you're calling, quote unquote, the super Negro, right? And the trick is that, they may let some people through, right? To turn around at the finger at the rest of us and say, why can't you make it, right? But the system itself is designed that way, where again, you don't have control over these outcomes. So if you can't control what happens in your home, you're not gonna, if your home is fractured, right, you're not gonna somehow go out into the world and then dominate economic institutions or even rise to the head of state. It's not possible.
Yeah, man. I mean, just keep going, bro. I don't want to divert attention away from where we need to go.
Okay, done. All right. So at the end of the day, it's not possible. So if remember, right, for those who are in the chat, we weren't even in control of this, which is the family, right? So remove how much you can influence the environment if you're not even in the ability, if you don't even have the ability to influence your own family, right? And so, because remember, the family will be the cornerstone of all the other institutions that I've already mentioned. Right?
And so I want to bring this to what I was talking about with my verbal martial art, getting into sword form 3, which I call the demon gate. And I always bring up that pyramid of that Maslow did, the latter one. And I'll put a link in the chat to that real quick so you guys can have a reference point. It's very important because these are all things that your culture in general is supposed to be acclimated to addressing and responding to. And understand that a lot of these changes do become epigenetic over a period of time, where if you don't have these needs being met and generation after generation, you're not used to that. That does leave a mark epigenetically on your bloodline, generally through the mother. If your physiological safety, belonging, and esteem are not being addressed, that's your foundation for coping with life. And so these are all things that the institution of culture is supposed to address. And the first institution that's supposed to be in place to provide that is family. And if that's compromised from the get-go, or if alternative arrangements with regards to that have been ways of getting that handled, that gets passed on from generation to generation. And BGS lately has been covering that with Kenneth Clark's work with Dark Ghetto, showing how these become pathologies that are passed down. And even if you get out of that for one generation, these things can be handed to you from things your grandparents experienced. And, on one hand, because it's epigenetic, it's easy for it to be passed down without people realizing it. But the good thing is that if you get involved in an environment that is stable, that can change. But it needs to be stable for a period of time for that to dissipate. But if all you do is take a group of people who are from this environment, and we've got this epigenetic inertia being passed down from generation to generation, all we end up doing is recreating the conditions of the plantation of what's being talked about in this slide, which continues to set us up for failure because we don't have those core baseline things being met by our culture. And therefore, we're not creating institutions designed to handle that. We in turn depend on other institutions that have other cultural inertia applied to it, leading to the very problem we highlighted in the very beginning, where these things are not created with, they're not made by you for you. Shout out to Fubu Hill. But that's our issue. We don't have these things starting with the impetus that begins with us. And that first initial impetus begins in that womb and where that womb came from.
And let me say this shit, man. I know it's gonna be kind of controversial, man. It might kick up a little dust or whatever the case may be. This is where the heal before we build shit comes into play, right? Because I've heard that phrase kicked around. We need to heal before we can build and all this kind of shit, right? But what are the preconditions of building? First of all, we have to have knowledge of why we are in the situation that we're in, correct?
Correct.
Like if we don't have intel about what we need to do predicated upon what we actually have undergone, then how does the healing process even begin? Like A lot of people act as if this requires some sort of internal salvation to turn this shit around. Like we got to become morally exemplary and rid ourselves of all the pain and the hurt. How is that possible? No, I mean, no disrespect, but like, how is it possible to get rid of all the pathology associated with you not controlling any of the institutions? Whether it be familial, educational, economic, or political, or military. You can't heal before you start building. You can't do it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's impossible. Because otherwise, niggas gonna have to heal themselves by themselves. Am I wrong about this?
No. Like I said again, where's the Buddha?
Hey man, I know I'm about to fuck some people up and get them angry or whatever the case may be. But there's no way that individual people can morally heal themselves or go through whatever psychological process that's necessary before they can begin to turn this shit around and to flip the script on it.
Gigi, that's been a big reason why I've been covering a lot of the topics on my channel lately that I've been addressing. Because I think empathy is the big issue here, and people not, and you said it in the very beginning, if you can't even see yourself as being worthy of something, how in the world are you going to share that with somebody else? I don't think it's possible. And that's why I said the currency of any institution is trust at the end of the day. And that's born from being able to have some measure of empathy for the people around you that you're going to be working and creating these things with. And if we don't address that, there's no hope, which is why I think the good that comes from a lot of these discussions is that at least we can clear away some presuppositions, because people are still going off the BS they're taught in school, and they're going off of the nonsense that we have not been told with regards to the truth, and more specifically contextualizing our history so that we understand, again, killing one narrative of we somehow didn't do anything. We damn sure did. It's just that in spite of everything that was done, we still move thousands of miles, and we're still 1,000 miles away from the target, but we still have moved 1,000 miles. It's just that people have this hyper objective measurement of, if you haven't reached X amount of miles in the positive spectrum, we don't count it, which is BS. Because I don't know any group of people who in the last 100 years literally had laws written against them to where they couldn't even read. It was illegal for us to freaking be literate. But and then look at what we've done in the last 40, 50. You understand what I'm saying?
I get it. But I want to point to something like right now, like the Coach Lamont is saying. And I understand this point. Right? It's like, okay, they're trying to help black women, but not us as black men. And look, I would say this. Help black women how? Like, and no disrespect to black women, because it's like, shout out to Marimba Ani, shout out to Frances Cress Welsing, shout out to a whole host of black women like Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, shout out to Elaine Brown, in the Black Panther Party and shit like that. Shout out to all the sisters out there who actually have the capacity to think about like what the history of black people's experience in the U.S. has been like. Shout out to them, okay? Because they have an understanding. Because and that requires going back. I got to take us back. If this thing can act right. I'm doing PowerPoint. This motherfucker taking this sweet ass time. It's going to take learning outside of the formal channels that they have at their institutions.
That part.
Yes.
It's going to require that. Because they're not going to have expertise for you in an area in their school that's going to make you call into question the justice of their system or the appropriateness of their system.
Correct.
And even if it does exist there to some degree, because like say, for example, black studies or African-American studies, they're going to water it down after a certain period of time and make it to where it's palatable to them. They ain't gonna let no radical shit persist within the confines of their own fucking halls of learning.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make sense. Why would they like develop the very thing which could, you know, make them be accountable when they've been ducking accountability for millennia or well, I won't say millennia, for centuries. So it's going to require informal learning. But most people don't like to formal learning, let alone adding informal learning to the formal learning process. You get what I'm saying?
Pants down.
Bro, you ask the average kid why they're in college, they're going to tell you, I'm here so I can get a fucking certificate so I can make money. They're not there to be on the cutting edge of forging forward so humanity can have access to more information. Like they're going to develop a new thing. Like they're really interested in an area of inquiry and they're going to take it as far as it can go. In the speculative and the practical areas related to that discipline, whether it's chemistry, business, physics, whatever the fuck it is. Most of these kids are going to school so they can get a fucking degree, so they can get a job working for somebody, so they can have health care and insurance and a retirement fund. And get a house and a car and buy other bullshit that they've been told that they have to have in order to have value in the culture. And they're going to do whatever it is just as much as they have to in order to meet the standards of proficiency so that they can get the degree. I mean, some will be, you know, they'll go above and beyond and be above average. But I mean, most people are average. They're just fucking average. They're not bringing anything exemplary to the table. Even at the collegiate level. I mean, this is just a fact. So what you're going to require from black people, especially intelligent black people, is to dig into an area of inquiry that is often left undiscovered or under-investigated or not investigated at all, which is black people who've written and who have done research. You got niggas going to school that don't know shit about what black people wrote. And that's a problem. Then when you present it to them, like, I mean, I've had women, man, that I've dated, and I'll take them to a festival or something, like, let's go to this festival or something. Let's see what they doing over here. It's like a little African-centered festival or some shit. And, you know, they have all the little books and shit out, you know, with the Ivan Van Sertima, Tia Anthony Diop, the Theophilo Benga, Ben Yakin, and, Anthony Browder, all that kind of shit. Most of these bitches will look at that shit, all you on that black shit.
He cool and pink.
Like, oh, now you gonna fuck, I gotta get my hair done. I need that creamy crack. What's all this black shit? You mean the shit that you come from, motherfucker? All this nigga shit? But I mean, these are educated women. Because I personally, it's been a few women that I've fucked with that have not had college degrees, but the vast majority of them have had college degrees that I've put my penis in. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. I mean, you know, because like, not to say that I can't dumb my conversation down, but I'm a pretty heady guy. So I'm going to require some kind of intellectual stimulation along with the fat ass. You get what I'm saying? So, but even they don't want to go above and beyond and learn more. A lot of them don't. So if you don't want to learn more, and a lot of women can't handle a nigga knowing more than they know anyway, though. Let's just come out and say that shit.
Say that shit again. God damn.
A lot of them cannot handle a nigga knowing more than they know. all that becomes the bane of everything they fucking have ever had to deal with in their goddamn life. Because, of course, I mean, quite naturally, most of the niggas that they have fucked with probably didn't know shit.
Or they think you being arrogant somehow, which I don't.
Oh, boy, I've heard that so much. Like, oh, you think
God,
you know
man.
everything. I'm like,
No.
bitch, I just know more than you.
God damn.
And I'm not trying to be ignorant even by saying that. Like, I tell them, like, look, this is not arrogance. Because I know I don't know everything. It's impossible. I'm not in an epistemic position to where I even feel like I'm superior to you because I know more than you. But I know more than you. I know more than you about politics. I know more than you about morality and ethics. I know more than you about history. I probably know more about fucking woman's history than you do. I know more about feminist thinking than you bitches do. Most of you. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. And then they get mad and they get fucking flustered if you're able to beat them in an argument. Then, I don't want to hear this argument anymore. Okay, well, bitch, bye, kick rocks.
And be mad they can't call you some kind of woman hater because they know damn well you ain't say nothing like that.
But
I mean, it's just the status quo.
It don't even be about hating women that these motherfuckers be mad at. They be mad about white versus black shit. That's the shit that... This is the shit that fucks me up about them. And it even... But it's niggas like this as well, though. Who will make everything... They'll make everything culpable on the Negro. Just like white people, they have nothing outside of the lexicon that white people have created in order to talk about personal responsibility.
Wait, Gigi, you mean but we got to do better and can't articulate shit else after that?
I'm like, bitch, okay, we need to do better how? Where should our efforts be directed?
I mean, there should be sounding like Charlie Brown teacher after that. I'm like, fam.
Bruh, do you know, like, a motherfucker tell you need to exercise. Okay, what kind of exercise do I need to do? You like know, if I wanna look like Lee Haney or some shit like that, old school
now
reference.
You know what I'm saying? You got to do the healthy exercises that, don't be too much, but don't be not enough. But
bitch,
you know
what exercises I need to do?
Look, you need to do the upper body and then the lower body. Bruh.
What type of diet do I need to have? How often do I need to work out? Do I need to do a split workout? Like, do I need to... I mean, but you get what I'm saying.
I'm with you, fam. I'm with you. And when you try to explain, that's when they pull the arrogance card. Like, there's no way you can have a conversation at a certain level. You just have to leave it alone and just smile and nod. And that's where I'm at. Either that or just speak so over the head that it's really you just talking to them. And they're just like, I'm just sitting here absorbing what you're putting down. And it's like, man.
But some women are at least they are not so prideful that they don't know what they don't front like they know what they don't know. A lot of them, some of them do front because they can't get over this idea that they better than niggas.
Yep.
But some of them just don't give a fuck. They'll be like, man, that's a smart nigga. Stay away from him. Don't fuck with him. Just give him some pussy. Give him, whatever. Give him some head or whatever. Leave him alone and laugh. And wait for the next encounter. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, some chicks understand. But then you got them women who, the gynocratic kind, they can't be wrong about shit. They got everything figured out. But they ain't read no black authors. They have no understanding of black history.
They'll be intersectionalists and don't even know about the Combahee River Collective, let alone Alice Walker and that whole circle, Gloria Steinem, none of that.
Bro, if you don't tell me shit about intersectionality if you don't know the prototype to the shit, bro. Motherfuckers don't even know who Kimberly Crenshaw is, but they talking about, I have interlocking and interlacing, interstices of oppression. I'm like, man, come on. Like, I've even taught classes and asked motherfuckers, do they know what intersectionality is? And they'll raise their hand. I'll be like, okay, well, what is it then? Who developed the theory? Like who? And what's the prototype that led to its development or its most current manifestation or whatever the case may be? Like we talking about 18 to 25-year-olds, bro. Like 18 to 25.
And then talking about how they a woman
sponge, man. Like, bro, I was a sponge. I was learning everything I could learn. I was learning everything I could learn, not just a few things, but everything I could get my hands on. I was reading philosophy in the classes I was supposed to read philosophy, but I was reading Stolen Legacy right along with it. I was reading Anthony Browder right along with it, which means I had to have read more than what I was reading in my studies. I brought George E. James to my philosophy professor at a black university. Now, all the fucking faculty at the university I attended was white in the philosophy department. All of them. No darkies. None. All of them was white. Man, that dude face turned red as a beet. And he come off it, and he called me by my first name, which I have not revealed my government here, but come off it. I say, come off of what, man? That's not a fucking argument. This is philosophy. What's the argument, bruh? He was so flustered he didn't want to have a conversation about it. I say, hey, bro, I'm done with this shit. It could have been that the book was some bullshit. But demonstrate how the book is some bullshit. That's all that's necessary for me.
They ain't about that, GG. They just want you to get with that bell curve so they can go on to the next class, man.
Bro, but the philosophy professors took a liking to me at that university because I would talk in their classes. And I would actually fucking do the homework. I wasn't always this way. When I first went to this university, all I did was smoke blunts and drink 40 ounces. Until I was about to fail, and then, I got the wake-up call like, motherfucker, we gonna send your ass home, and you going to the military, you gonna do something other than this shit, fucking our paper up. I said, okay, point well taken, I understand. And then I just start studying. I was like, fuck it, I'm here, let me stop fucking around and bullshitting and, smoking blunts and drinking 40 ounces and fucking around trying to chase chicks, and let me just do what I'm supposed to do, and when I get it done, then let me do that. So, it got to the point where I was like acing the courses and shit. Like, just getting straight A's and shit like that. And it wasn't because I was smart. It was because I actually just fucking did the work. I don't have any, innate natural aptitude that anybody else doesn't have. I just fucking did the work. But it requires doing a little bit of extra work, though. But it was interesting. This shit was fascinating to me. Especially to learn about Cheikh Anta Diop, Theophilo Benga, Ivan Van Sertima, all them dudes, man. It was interesting as hell because this is the shit that they won't tell you at all. Or they'll tell you it's a lie. Or they'll tell you you're grasping for straws, trying to, basically adopt elements of other culture so that you can make yourself look good to deal with the racism that you're dealing with now.
It's genius, really. It's genius, really. Even looking what Cheikh Anta Diop did with the Egypt conversation, followed by what Dr. Joseph Ben did with 75 years on the field. Who does that now? You know what I'm saying?
But it's not important anymore because what's important now is sexual politics.
Right.
And not to say that sexual politics, to some degree, don't have any import at all. Okay? I've always said, let's look at your politics, but let's not get consumed by your politics, especially if it's the politics of white motherfuckers that distract away from the real material conditions of black folks on the ground or other oppressed peoples on the ground. I don't care who you able to fuck. Niggas living in the projects and shit, and you got motherfuckers worried about getting their back blown out. You know what I'm saying? Some gentrified ass white folks that like to eat gerbils and shit out of people's asses. I don't care. You ain't dealt with the real shit yet. Now we talking about representation and visibility and acknowledgement and the politics of recognition. Fuck all that, man. We was already off that. Martin Luther King Jr. was already off that. Like, fuck that. We did that. We opened up the door for that. That was the easiest thing to do. Now it's time to start moving the books, to start crunching numbers and changing the ledgers.
War on
And
poverty.
It's time to start doing some accounting. But then black people will come along and say, "Oh, you niggas just want a handout. You niggas just want something for nothing." None of the like I'm just responding like no disrespect to Slick Rick, bro. Come on, dog. Like, look, Jesus Christ, my bro. All I'm trying to say is that white people, man, got the Homestead Act. That shit lasted for over 150 fucking years, bro.
Followed by New Deal policies on top of all of that.
Giving away white boy, like, here, take this land, man. You like some more? They was giving the shit away to white boys, man. And if you even mention the subsidies that they got, they'll say, well, only a certain amount of people were eligible for this percentage of that, and they didn't have Negroes wouldn't have had the down payments, bro. The FHA loan policy was set up in such a way that people were able to pay on their mortgages. They were able to pay mortgages that were cheaper than their fucking goddamn rental property that they were renting. They were able to make an initial purchase, a down payment on property that was less than the cost of the fucking deposit to rent the property that they were renting.
Facts.
But a nigga will come along and tell you, in order to basically justify conservative right-wing policies, they'll say, well, no, that's not accurate. No, we really still would be here. Look, bro, I do understand. The black people, man, they've been reading some right-wing shit, but you gotta juxtapose this shit with all of the information. Am I anti-union? I know SandDog is, but I'm not, okay? I'm anti-racism within unions, but I don't think unions in and of themselves are the issue. I think the racism within the unions are the issue.
I agree with you there. That's why I was anti-union.
But the idea to just be anti-union just because so we can make rich white motherfuckers more rich? What type of stupid, like you niggas, it's the aspirationalism, like I can one day be like Bezos and Forbes and all these guys. Bruh, the likelihood is you will not. Most black men are on a fucking downwardly mobile track, even if they're born to rich parents.
Shout out
Those
to
are
the
the
culture.
facts.
Shout out to the culture. And look, and to give you a contrast, all you got to do is take a look at other groups of people that migrate here. They don't use that same language. They're not telling the dude that can't speak English and all he can do is count, bootstrapism. He's getting a job and he's behind the register paying for your daggone Red Bull you finna get. registering you up. Don't speak a damn piece of English. Just 1355. Like there you go. That's you. That's them. Finna own the store so you can take your behind to work and pump your gas for that day. Going to the job and he's gonna own that business that you're shopping at. Meanwhile, we've been here 400 years plus. Still can't get that. Again, you take that modality of effort and work and multiply it by your culture. And for us, that number 0. Guess what you got? 0 at the end of that number. We call that in my circle gynometry.
Well, look, the point is, the point. Have you ever heard of the whole concept of nigga? It ain't the work that we doing. We ain't working smart. Like it ain't how hard you work. It's whether or not you working smart. You get what I'm saying? Like, look. I used to do construction work, dog. I built bridges, dog. That's some hard ass work. I'm here to tell you, dog. And it's dangerous as fuck. Okay? And you talk about being productive and actually making something. It ain't, no disrespect to the people in the transportation industry, but the transportation industry is a service industry. Do you get what I'm saying?
No.
There's no manufacturing of anything that comes out of it. You fucking transport packages from point A to B, or widgets, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? At least in construction, something's being edified, correct? It's a tangible product that you can see, right?
Yep.
Okay? Yeah. So there's something actually being manufactured.
So,
okay?
Correct.
I've built fucking bridges, nigga, suspension bridges. I've retrofitted suspension bridges. Okay? The whole nine. I mean, you know, dealing with the all kinds of little, the columns, the horizontal members. I've put rebar in. I retrofitted cold, warm joints and shit like that. The whole nine, bro. It's some hard fucking work, but you can either do it proficiently and, get the most out of everything you're doing ergonomically, or you can be like a new motherfucker out there just busting his ass but getting just as much done as you are, but he putting in more effort to do it. It's ergonomics, man. We don't have because we don't move as a unit. We don't move as a team. Black people believe of doing everything how, like, they ideologically present what you're supposed to be doing in American culture, which is every individual is a monad doing what is best for him, and he's working to, put together his own life plan and to be successful on his own terms, with him against the environment by himself. That's the myth, the social myth. That's not how fucking human beings act, bro. And it definitely ain't how they act. Shout out to the KKK, man, and all the daughters of the Confederacy and all. These motherfuckers they move in swarms. They move as a team. But you gotta figure it out all by your little nigga self. It's the craziest shit in the world, man. Every Negro feels like he got to engage in his own little Sisyphean fucking labor.
And look, we got to do all of that.
The Sisyphus, right? You know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Every nigga got to himself every day move a rock all the way up the hill by himself and demonstrate that he has the moral virtue in order to do it, only to have a fucking vulture come, rip his goddamn liver out as soon as he at the top of the hill, and got to start the process over every fucking day.
Correct.
And that's what niggas require.
Yeah.
They don't have a set of institutions where, okay, bro, gonna make sure, look, you don't have to do everything we did, but we want to keep this shit going because it's some good shit. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
But we can't pass on the information because why? We can't stand to see another nigga get ahead of us.
But look, we've also got to deal with the fact that everybody in question gets to benefit from things I linked right here, just off the New Deal alone. Everybody in this country but black folks or anybody subject to the brown paper bag rule didn't have any access to these policies. And they got the nerve and audacity to tell you not to take handouts. And then scream about how we've got this bootstrapism multiplied by zero harder. Nobody has anything that they have right now without having a group that they can aggregate power and resources with. And it's why I've said from the very onset, our demographic suffers from the fact that we are so goddamn strong that we can get by without needing anybody's help. But we are also crippled by the fact that we are so goddamn strong that we can get by without needing nobody else's help. That's the damn problem.
Y'all call it John Henryism. I call it the negative evaluation of honor and like the blues, you know, it's like black people love the blues and they love to testify and shit and talk about how hard they got it. You know, like, I mean, like that, you can get addicted to that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'll tell
and
you
people
this,
think I'm saying that we should focus on our pain. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish here. It might seem like that, like I want to be stuck in complaining. No, actually, I want to be stuck in knowing the facts.
And status reports are not complaints. That's what I keep saying.
All I'm trying to do is say, okay, if you're on the operating table, you want a motherfucker that has your vitals and statistics going every second. So if your fucking heart rate goes too low, or your blood pressure's too low, or if it's too high, we know so we can give you the responding drugs to either lower or to increase the pressure or to increase or decrease the heart rate. We need to know what the fuck is going on with your vital statistics at all times. Not so we can look at the motherfucking statistics and stay stuck in a state of catatonic shock, just looking at the stats, but so we can be proactive and know how we adjust. That's what fucking coaches do when they're looking at basketball or football games. They're constantly assessing what's happened. And they're constantly talking to the players like, okay, he did this. Okay, how do you think we should approach that? And there's a dialogue about what they should be doing, right? But at least they have the benefit of knowing they're on the same team, right? If they're playing against another team, right? We don't even know what team we're on.
Nah, Gigi, your post was fine yesterday. What's the problem?
Yeah, but you know, hey, I mean, we need to constantly be in dialogue with one another. But the problem is we don't believe that because we so deeply and so profusely want to participate in this shit, and the promise that it actually exists for us as much as it exists for them, it still is something that is proselytized to us. Especially now. Because the first thing a white boy will tell you, aren't you American? Ain't you American?
About that.
I'll be like, hey, I told a white boy the other day, I said, hey, bro, look, man, what you want me to tell you a lie, man? Yeah, I'm American, but you want me to lie about America and its history in order to make you feel comfortable and you feel like you're virtuous? No, America's got some. The first thing he talked about was because white boys like to talk about politics in the abstract, and they like to, the guns, and I can't take my gun from me, especially in Texas and shit like that, which I don't have a problem. Like, I don't want my guns taken away either, but let's face the facts. What did all this shit start for anyway? All this gun talk and all this shit. It basically is all centered around you being in fear of a revolt that could potentially come about related to race.
Yeah.
Like we have to lie about it? You know what the fuck you did to the Native Americans. You know you took their whole fucking landmass through force and fraud and through disease. You know you did that shit. Yeah. You know you enslaved hundreds, millions of people. You know you did that shit. So y'all always on edge and shit. And you don't want nobody to come take your fucking property, but you take motherfuckers' labor. No, you take more than their labor. You'll take their culture, their religion, their God, their language. You'll take that shit from them. You'll take their land from them. And then tell a motherfucker with conviction, you're not coming to take my shit. Like, what's yours, motherfucker? Everything you got, you stole. And then when you tell them that, they really can't say shit. What can they say? Other than to get tight-lipped about the shit. But I just know that nobody's coming to take my personal stuff. Man, don't nobody even want your personal shit. Because to be quite honest, the average white dude really ain't got shit worth taking no way. All we asking for is you to straighten up your institutions, man. Straighten up and fly right. And pay us what the fuck you owe us. Don't pay us money just a one-time shot. Make sure that we're enfranchised just like your population or your demographic was enfranchised. It ain't gonna really actually take away from you because this ain't a zero-sum game. But they can't see it like that. Because racism creates zero-sum games.
Yeah, they won't admit the fact that the majority of that's even going back in their pockets in the first place. And quite frankly, if we doing good, they doing good. And I don't know why. Well, I think we know why they can't handle that. But at the end of the day, we look at what's going on with the population. We look at what's happening with their demographic globally. And this whole W classification is going out the window. And we already have that contrasting with this person of color mess being put forward. So, folks need to figure it out. I guess this is the citizen conversation on what in the world a citizen means in America in the first place. And quite frankly, we haven't even been around long enough to really have that definition understood from a socio-political, let alone cultural level.
Yeah. So this information here is something that comes from your higher commander, right? So these are things that your commander would know in the situation paragraph, again, that's about, about the enemy, right? So you're looking at you're looking at 4 million freed Negroes, right? In terms of the size, right? The activity, right? Again, defected to the North, for the most part, or under Northern rule after the loss of the Civil War, right? Location, primarily slave-holding states and smaller populations in the free states. Unit, right? We don't belong to any military units unless you're in the Northern Regiment, right? And so the other people, for the most part, are now, in the sense, refugees, right? Because the Southern government is gone. Slavery is quote and unquote for the time being ended as an institution, right? And then so again, so so in my scouting days you would track the time, right? So that's something that will go up in your report, right? So let's say, for example, we would give like a slant report. So let's say, for example, I would get on the radio, Black 6, this is Red 1, slant report as follows, break, 6. So, but
That's just the way it is, though.
yeah. So you'll say, so I would get up there, again, so I had 6 M3A3 Bradleys, right? So slant 6, negative contact, continue emission, time, blah, 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 and then you would give your report. So that's how it looks over the radio. And then obviously, right, what equipment did we have? Nothing. So we were set free and then told, hey, there's the river for when you're thirsty and you got the wind for your bellies, and that's pretty much you know what I'm saying, that's pretty much how it was, right? Because you got not a damn thing for the most part, really, right? And so you can go to the next slide. Okay. And so again, so this will be draw D. So now again, if you're, remember, I'm kind of playing with this. So we would have something called intelligence preparation of the battlefield. So you're looking at this from, from the side of what the southern states or the institutions or the United States government, would want at the time. So, they're looking at us and saying, okay, what are they defending, right? Their new freedom and rights. What do they want to reinforce? Negro rule, right? So what will they do? What will they do eventually, right? Attack free God-fearing white people and their property, right? And so, okay, to withdraw, hey, we want the withdrawal of Northern troops because they're preventing white prosperity. And what's going to be delayed? Nothing.
Understand, this MO is still in operation. This ain't go nowhere. It's just that they've recruited new folks that look like me and you to this cause, ironically. But go ahead.
Yeah. So again, right, but it all goes back into institution, right? So again, so if you have whatever institution that you have, whatever institution that we have in the United States, what was America built on? So sad and most unfortunately, you're not going to escape it. And so for us, it was that was a huge strategic mistake when we decided, not to, when desegregation was happening, not to educate, not to educate each other about our culture, our circumstances, whether it be formal or informal. So this is where the mistake now, kind of comes into play, right? So even now, like, there's a thing of, quote and unquote, like, laughing at hotep dudes or, all this stuff. But when I was coming up, right, those were like a lot, that will be the beginning of me getting into the stuff, that I told you about. So the problem is because we are limited in our ability to create and maintain institutions, right? We can't put the things together in our community that will ultimately make machines. Because one of the things that we forget is that whenever we try to do it, we're constantly undermined. So you have to remember, the Black church was undermined, right? Marcus Garvey will be undermined. The civil rights movement will be undermined, and so this is why you will have the riots of 1968, right? Because just like what Gigi said, you got the symbolic victory, but no real tangibles. And so for the rest of the world, just because you're not getting hit on the head with a billy club anymore, and all of these other things, this is what will lead many Black people, especially if they got good jobs and everything going forward, or the rest of the world in general, that this is all over. But people forget, one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and it says, we don't deal in flesh and blood, but in principalities, right? And spiritual wickedness in high places. And so all pretty much, and then you take that, and then you co-opt the image of Martin Luther King, who pretty much died the most hated man in America. And so now when you see Martin Luther King, you get, if we can light a candle for everything he's done, right? And you get the violins, you get the American flags, and, and it's painted as if, Martin Luther King got up in Washington, D.C., gave a speech, and then all of America just looked at each other and was like, you know what? He's right. And from that day forward, racism crumbled and we all went off in kumbaya. And that could be, what I'm saying? Again,
I just think, well, let me just say this. Well, when it comes, see, they're masters at framing because they're masters of propaganda. Yeah. Okay, so, and that's one of the things that I didn't notice, but I do notice, in relation to education, but one of the things, and this is also part of the military, as you well know, they always got a propaganda force somewhere. Yeah. Pushing out like rhetoric that makes them look like they're fighting on the behalf of what's good and righteous. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, so like in every war, they're talking about like, okay, we're bringing, we're defeating evil. We're stopping terrorism. We're preventing the encroachment of communism or the spread of socialism. Or so. They always have, language that they can utilize in order to, put you on your heels. Like even the Jews had this shit. Like if you say something that they don't like, it's anti-Semitism. Like we don't have, what do Black people have? We don't even use anti-Black. We just say it's racism or some shit like that. It was racist or something. We don't have a clear, defined language predicated upon propaganda in order to advance our interests. And that's problematic. So now it's even gotten to the point where what epistemic information that can be beneficial to us is now typecast as something to be avoided because it's hotep.
But you know what? Yes, correct.
Who the fuck? What type of stupid niggas? I don't care if they women or men or whoever they are. I don't care if they fucking straight or gay. You should try to understand what Black people wrote, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not. And you don't typecast it as some shit called hotep. You name it what the fuck it is. Say it's Afrocentric. Call it what it is. Call it Black nationalist. Don't call it, don't caricaturize it so that you don't even take the effort to see what any of it says. This is the stupidity. But you'll listen to all the shit white bitches got to say. So now what they have to say is palatable,
No,
and it's digestible. But the shit niggas had to say, oh, that's some whole type of shit.
no, but we did have a way to get the word out, right? And so again, because a lot of us are sitting in the States, man, but how we got the word out about our condition and who and what we were was happening with hip hop, right? But then again, that will get corrupted, into something else with gangster rap, and all of this other stuff. So globally, people were listening to like Public Enemy, KRS-One, and a lot of that stuff, that was out. Got they were listening to that. Matter of fact, I read an article in the Source in the 90s, when we were teenagers, and they went to a place. It was a place in Japan, and basically the article described it as if you closed your eyes, right? Because it was a dance hall reggae scene. They said if you closed your eyes, you would have thought you were in Flatbush in Brooklyn, right? But he was in Japan, and they asked the young Japanese people at that time, well, okay, dance hall reggae and hip hop. Well, how do you feel about black people? And the response of the Japanese youth that they interviewed was, well, black people didn't drop those bombs over here.
Mm.
And so, like I said, and so what happened was, what happened was you took hip hop, which was something hip hop, jazz, the blues, the funk, because even Nameless will tell you, if you listen to Japanese music, one of the things they have a lot of, they have funk, hip hop, fusion. Even when you look at the emergence of these Korean boy bands and stuff like that, they themselves will tell you that they're heavily influenced by African American music. So by co-opting hip hop in our music and making it a degenerate and taking it to degeneracy is what has put us in a position or put us in a position of a lost potency of a powerful message.
And see, what's interesting, and I'll say this because there's a lot of artists that we knew in the golden era. There's a reason why a lot of them went to East Asia, specifically Korea and Japan. And a lot of that K-pop, a lot of what's going on with J-pop, and a lot of MCs and DJs that were influenced by that were folks who retired from America because they were getting garbage contract deals. They started all the way over in those places, and they have full cultural agency over their music and have influenced and shaped and terraformed that entire industry. You can take the average MC from America that's just amateur. If you've got a recording studio and you can spit over a beat, you go over there. It's like taking college kids here in basketball and having them play a freaking freshman high school team anywhere else in the world. There's no comparison. There's MCs right now getting paid that can't spit to save their life. And there's people you sat at the lunch table and fucking beat on the lunch table and freestyle over that got better MC skills than a lot of folks getting paid right now over there. And no one's talking about it. But people that are at the top of the industry know. But it's a cultural thing. And it's just a matter of cultural agency. And it shows how much potency our culture does have, which has been made redundant over here because it's kind of normal to see anybody just going on an instrumental and doing whatever, as long as they can market it. Not required overseas. Your skin tone is enough.
Yeah. So even for us, right? So like overall, when you look at the Negro disposition, and we have quotes, from I've taken just a couple of quotes from Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey, and so again, so I'm looking at this, right, and so all of these things are, again, if you go off their rhetoric, right, going up to Birth of a Nation, all of these things are things talking about Negro rule, right? So, so Frederick Douglass saying opposing slavery and hating its victims has become very common form of abolitionism, right? So again, he's even addressing people in the North. And then one of the things that America feared countrywide in and of itself will be the rise of Black nationalism, especially, around the time of Marcus Garvey. And then, this is where you get the Bureau of Investigations, which will ultimately become, the FBI. So it's one of the things that a lot of people have to remember is that, again, in our struggle in the States, we were constantly, like I said, there's a constant undermining in terms of the pursuit of freedom. Could you go to the next slide? And then, right, then you would have, the white position, right? So at that time, so you have Alexander Stephens, which the vice president of the Confederacy, and we talked about his cornerstone speech, right? When he says, our new government is founded upon exactly this idea. Its foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great philosophical, and moral truth. And so one of the things that I forgot to put in here is that, remember, so even after slavery is over, even during this time, many other states, southern states, would confirm and echo this sentiment. And they would echo this sentiment, all the way up to Jim Crow, or maybe even now, probably somewhere in some quiet halls, again, they still echo this, and this is what the belief is, right? So for a lot, and like, again, and this is what was called the cornerstone speech. So you're talking about the foundations in which a society will be built, right? The foundation of what their institutions will be. So when you get, so for example, so at least, so for African Americans, at least, right, you can look at this and you can say that, institutions, the state, education, all these things are your enslavement is at the foundation of this, right? So if the Confederacy survives, what kind of education you think you're getting? What kind of family structure you think you have? What type of access to economics you think is going to take place, right? And it's not going to, again, it's not going to be anything good, because, again, what they believe is that the natural order of things is for you to be in servitude. And the North isn't that far off, right? Again, it's just a lot of kind of moral grandstanding. But if they could Thanos snap your ass away, you'll be as good as gone. Right. And so, again, so this is what you get out of the situation paragraph. Right. And the next paragraph to come will be the mission statement. And the mission statement gives you who, what, when, where, why. Right. And so, and so the next time we talk, we'll talk about, like I said, we'll talk about the mission statement, and we'll talk about, and we'll talk about more about what white supremacy identified about Black people, what made them right. Because remember, they seen a fair share of success. So they have to be making the right calls, right? And so the purpose of this is to identify where they made the right call, why it was the right call, and then what can, what can we do to clean or fix it up. And so, Gigi, if you can, like for the last one, just the photo that has slave morality and master morality.
Hold on, I'm looking for it right now. So I'm looking to put those up right now. So
okay.
I gotta save the images to my computer, and then I can pull them up.
Yeah. And so, kind of getting into that, right? So, again, just on the base level, right? So law is a body of rules and regulations.
Let me show you. I'm gonna pull it up so you can say that. And okay. I'll try to explain it too if it'll fucking open.
Please. But this is why it's a like.
Okay, hold on. So let me see, because we need to get through this before I know Dr. Johnson is starting to stream, and people gonna want to dip off and look at that. But we gotta get through this, man. Shout out to Doc Johnson. Can y'all see that? Is it big enough? Yeah. Can it be bigger? I don't want to make it too big to where you can't see any of it.
No, it was good the first
time. Make it a little smaller so you can get both sides in. The text isn't that small.
Okay.
That works.
I wish I could make it more robust, but I can't. So look. One could argue that law is a component of what justice is, okay? And that morality has something to do with ethics. Not to say that these two don't blend into each other or there's no overlap or anything like that, okay? We're not saying that. But typically, when you talk about law, you're talking about a system of rules that a country or a community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members, and in which you're going to get negative externalities if you break them. Like they're gonna be penalties for you breaking these rules. Okay. Now, morality is a set of ethical principles that define what's morally right and what's morally wrong. Okay. The law is enforced by certain bodies or institutions within a country, a state, or a local community or municipality. When it comes to morality, there really isn't, especially if you get a separation of church and state, there's no, institutional framework in which, the moral codes are going to be enforced such that there's going to be negative externalities, okay? Like for example, I'll just use an example. Cheating on a math test is immoral. But there's no law against it. I mean, you might flunk the motherfucker, but nobody's gonna throw you in jail because you cheated on your math test. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right? At one point, and then sometimes what you used to do that was unethical that might have been against the law, like laws change. Okay? So, like, adultery is immoral. It's even illegal, but like the law doesn't really observe it as being that, bad of a violation of the law. And you also got to understand that there's different levels of punitiveness as it pertains to the law in and of itself, because you got different areas of law. You got tort law, contract law, civil law, criminal law. So it's different areas of law, and your violation of any particular code has to, correspond with the severity of public harm or the harm to an individual, and so on and so forth. So all that shit's got to be factored in. But typically, it's very difficult to enforce morality, much more so than it is to, enforce laws, right? And so it's a difference there. So I'm just trying to break what you was going to break down. If you got anything to add, go ahead.
No, correct. You know what I'm saying? And so basically, again, this is everything that we went to was to come draw up this distinction, right? So again, we're talking in closing because we don't want to take away from what Dr. Johnson is doing. And so, maybe we'll cover just a little bit more of it in the introduction for the next one when we get to the mission statement. But again, it's very clear difference that there's a difference between law and morality. So even when you go into the Second Great Awakening, right, the ethics was from religion that slavery should come to an end, right? However, the United States had it on law, in the books, right? So just to kind of show that correlation, that just because something is deemed legal does not mean that legal is necessarily moral. And so I think where Black people in the past have gotten tripped up, or maybe even now, is that we're dealing in things as they should be instead of planning and managing things as they are. Right. So many of you guys heard me say this before, is that in warfare, the terrain is the terrain. If it's muddy outside, it's muddy. You have to prepare. Right. If it's rocky outside, it's rocky. And so, again, to quote SWP, which I do, this is a statement that he said that I do like, is that we have to stop showing up. If everybody else is playing football, we have to stop showing up in soccer uniforms and wondering why we're losing. Right. So pretty much that like I said, that's it on my part. And then, again, because, I don't want to take away from the good doctor, Tia San. So, that's it.
Yeah, well, let's come back to this later. But,
Yeah, we'll come back. Yeah.
But my whole thought process about the difference between master versus slave morality is what you have here, and we'll go into it in greater detail the next time we meet, which I hope both of y'all can come back. But like at the end of the day, slave morality, man, it's like this aggressive asking and demand that, you know, for like, it's feminine qualities, actually. That's why you got it like pink and blue.
There you go. Not to cut you off, Gigi, because there's another one that I was going to include in the mission statement, and that would better the conversation, because I have another one it's male psychology versus female psychology. So we could actually take both of them and put them side by side.
I mean, it's just like the idea of what gets brought up with human nature when it talks about the means by which masculine and feminine energy derive power, where the feminine principle is all about, well, rather, firstly, the masculine principle is all about giving indicators of what it will do, whereas that feminine modality is giving indicators of what it will not do. And so it's in that negative affirmation that we get this reversal of morals, where the weak is flipped as a noble virtue. It's where you get terms that were intrinsic and inherent in Christianity, such as the meek shall inherit the earth. You know, it's these kind of concepts that even Nietzsche criticized, you know, in the book, where he pretty much created the idea of slave. He created the way in which it's framed, because it was a critique on Christianity in general, and thusly Western values, which he identifies has a strong root in Christianity, thanks to what occurred with the Protestant movement in particular. But there's definitely this whole modality of power where it seeks other individuals to take accountability for it, rather than taking the initiative to seize, taking, and organize in and of itself. And we run into a lot of these problems when we start analyzing our experience on the plantation, the coping mechanisms that would have been required to function, followed by the kind of Christianity we received, where we can take a look at a simple story like Daniel in the lion's den, and the story we got is Daniel's in the corner, you know, curled up like some little punk, waiting for God to solve everything. Whereas everybody else gets the same story told, and Daniel's walking up to the lions talking shit, saying, look, you ain't finna do nothing to me because God got my back. Like, who is going to be postured to actually gain control and influence over society versus someone that's going to be subject to it, waiting on pie in the sky? You know, this is the core of it.
Now, this is complex, but you know, at the end of the day, I got a lot to say about it, and I know I can't say very much about it right here, right now, because we damn near 3 hours into this, and I thank you guys for your time. But the last thing that I do want to say, if I have anything to say about it at all, is that according to a person like Nietzsche, slave morality it arises out of hatred and contempt.
Right, because the slave hates the master.
Right. Yeah, the slave is envious. And actually wants to be in the position of the master, but they don't want to do what's requisite in order to actually, you know, to enjoy what the master has. A lot of this falls out of, you know, the Hegelian master and slave dialectic, which you know I don't even want to get into, because you can't have a master without a slave, and you can't have a slave without a master. Okay. But there's one could argue that there's a dialectical relationship that exists, and that, you know, both of these classes of people undermine each other eventually.
Well, shout out to the rule of two, right? That could be a good framework to describe it under in a way.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, but at the end of the day, when I look at this, I say, come on, man, fam, like you just got to pay attention, especially when women are using the language like that. They're like actually kind and empathic, and you know that like they want equity, and like that they're good people. Man, they some of the nastiest bitches in the world, bro. I mean, feminists, you know, like I'm just keeping it 100. Like, and they conceal it under the rhetoric that they're being nice and that women are really neat people. They doing some ignorant and foul shit just like everybody else out here, bro. You know what I'm saying? And Negroes can do the same shit using the same kind of rhetoric. Okay. But I at least I'm honest enough to come out and say I am envious of the fact that you got a group of motherfuckers that got all kinds of subsidies and governmental, you know, help in relation to their ability to function, to flourish, and to thrive, and then they just left us out in the cold like, fuck you. You know, and then they make all these moral proclamations about our praiseworthiness or our blame, you know, a blameworthiness. I just don't like it, bro. But anyway, thank y'all for coming today, man, and you know, giving us the rundown that you get. Man, we gotta, you know, holler at Faulkner, man. I don't know what the fuck what happened to him. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, find him. Cause you know, I don't want to put his name on some shit that he ain't participating in. You know what I mean? So but anyway, man, thank y'all for coming to rock. And hopefully y'all be here next time. Y'all want to do it around the same time of day?
Works for me, fam.
Yeah, man.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I'll get with Nameless and we'll confirm the next date.
For sure. Well, peace to all y'all out there, man. I appreciate y'all coming through and everybody who donated and participated. I appreciate y'all, man. But it's time to go ahead and check out what BGS and Tia Sign got going on that other show, man. I'll holler at y'all later, man.
All right, peace.
Peace.